Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my review for Gotham, Season 1, Episode 2, Selina Kyle. Now, I honestly didn't know what to think about this episode because last week's episode, while I did enjoy the premiere, there were a lot of things I didn't enjoy about it. The constant references, the fact that they had random cameos in there. I wasn't exactly happy the direction they were going in. However, this episode was a major improvement. Major improvement. I love that this episode focused most on Cat or Selina Kyle, or if she wants to be called Cat. I'm gonna call her Cat because she wants to be called that. So I thought this episode was just fantastic. I really love where it's going. And really, I really loved everything about this episode. Thought it was definitely very well done and definitely a major improvement over the last episode. I enjoyed it more. So let's just get to this episode. So we see Bruce, and he's holding his hand above a candle flame, and he lowers it to the flame until it touches his skin, and I'm like, why is he doing this? Alfred comes in and says he was looking for him everywhere, and by the way, we see a lot more of Alfred in this episode. The guy that plays Alfred, I don't know who he is, but he is doing an amazing job. Like, he really is doing as good as a job as Michael Caine did in the Dark Knight movies. He's doing just as good as Alfred did. He really reminds me very much of Michael Caine in The Dark Knight and things like that. So, he asks the boy what he's doing and tells him he's a terrible liar when he won't fess up, and he shows him his burned palm, and Alfred calls him stupid, hugs him tight, and tells him it will be alright. So, you can see that Bruce is sort of, he's doing stuff to himself. He's trying to, he's kind of trying to kill himself, basically, and burning himself. I mean, it was really weird, but then we see Cat, and we saw Cat last week for no reason. It makes sense why we saw her now, but last week they made it feel like she's just going to be hiding the whole episode. She actually has lines in this episode, and Cat was much younger than I thought she was going to end up being. She is actually a little girl in this show, and that was a little bit surprising. I wasn't expecting that, but I like that they went in that direction. It's a cool direction that they went in. She, is in an alley playing with a trinket, and a truck pulls up, and a woman then hops out and introduces her, she and her partner as Patty and Doug from the mayor's outreach program. These two are our main villains of the episode, and I'm going to admit it, they were really creepy. They were really creepy, just really creepy. Like, they did a really good job with casting good criminals, because these criminals were really creepy. They were creepy. They have sandwiches for the homeless, teenagers. Patty uses a syringe to knock out several of the homeless kids, and when she did that, I'm like, okay, these are not going to be good people. At first, I thought they were going to be, but then Doug ends up shooting a homeless guy that tries to stop them, and then chases down a guy, and they end up wrestling and falling through the window of a posh cafe. So I knew there, I'm like, okay, yeah, these are not going to be good people. So the next day, Jim stands over the body of the hobo that was shot, and he uses his pen to lift out dog tags, and Cat watches from behind a fence nearby, but crouches so Harvey won't see her, and they wonder where the crime scene techs are, and Harvey isn't much interested in finding the bum's killer, but Jim says he's a vet, and they ask the beat cop where he's been. He says he was at Chez Vaz, where a guy fell through the window, and Jim asks why the kid jumped through the window and if he was high, and he tells the beat cop he sucks at his job. They grapple, and Harvey is pissed when they make him drop his coffee. So the teen then tells him that they were attacked, and the woman used a pen on them, and he tells him it's been going on for weeks and that no one cares about them. And Harvey tries to nail the homeless guy's murder on him, but the guy says that Cat saw the entire thing. She knows everything that happened, and she saw the entire thing. So Jim pulls Harvey away and tells him to back off. Harvey reminds him that he just shot a guy in cold blood, dumped him there. Pretty much Harvey thinks that he still thinks that he killed Oswald. So there's a lot of tension between Harvey and Jim in this next scene. Harvey tells me no one gives a shit about him, and Harvey says he's tired of his attitude. So that was definitely very interesting what happened there. So then we see Oswald, and I was wondering, where is Oswald going next? It turns out that Oswald is he's going down a road, and this car stops for him, and it pulls away, but then it reaches a door, and they do it a couple more times to annoy him, and it's a couple of these really annoying guys, like really annoying teenage guys. Actually, no, not teenage guys, but just like really annoying guys, really loud, obnoxious, just really annoying. and they tell him he smells bad, and then they spray him with air freshener, and they offer him a beer. And they ask what happened, and he says his foolish arrogance led him astray, and he says he learned his lesson and will come back stronger and smarter. He clinks beer with them, and one of the guys says when he walks, he looks like a penguin. Okay, that was a good reference. Okay, that I liked. It's not constant in this episode. Last episode, there were so many references to him being a penguin, and there wasn't as many in this episode, which I was happy about. So, Oswald then smashes the beer bottle, stabs the guy in the neck with it, and the driver screams in horror, and that was, like, so intense what happened there. I wasn't expecting that at all, and that was just huge what happened there. So now Oswald has another murder he needs to cover up. He needs to cover up this murder as best he can, and I was very interested in seeing what was going to happen there. So then Harvey is complaining to his boss about Jim, and she tells Jim if he doesn't bend, he'll break. And he tells her about the kidnappers that are taking teens under the guise of offering help. And Harvey says no one wants these kids anyway. So then we see Ed. And Ed actually has a purpose in this episode. He's not just in the episode because, oh, he's going to be the Riddler. No, he's in the episode for a reason. He lurks outside, and then Essen comes in, calls him in. And he tells them he found ATP in the teen's bloodstream, and he says it was used at Arkham Asylum, and it's hard to get and not used recreationality. So Essen dismisses Ed. He stands awkwardly and then goes. She tells the two to get to work, but no press, and Jim wants to warn the public, but she says no because it will cause a bunch of panic, a lot of panic. That's probably not the best thing to do. So she tells Jim to follow up on the drug and the Arkham connection, and Harvey says the place has been closed for 10 years, and he says it's on Fish's turf, and he wonders if it's safe for them to go back. And then we see a scene with Fish, and this was very interesting what happened here. Fish sits and she's watching a band play and she's cheering, and she's surprised to see Falcone come in. And he has to talk, and she offers to clear the place, but he says it's fine. And Falcone tells her that the man, that men are about to die, who are about to die, are very honest. And he tells her he talked to Oswald before he died. Everyone pretty much is under the impression that Oswald is dead. I like this plot of everyone thinking that Oswald is dead, when in reality James Gordon just made him leave Gotham. So, basically everyone pretty much thinks that Jim killed Oswald when he didn't. So, basically, Falcone says he and the Waynes had an understanding and now things are out of balance, and he says when an empire is out of balance, things happen. He says the Marani family will make moves if they sense weakness. This scene made me think that Falcone might have been the one to murder Bruce's parents, because he said that he, had an understanding, and the out of balance really makes me think that, oh, he had an understanding with them, maybe they broke that promise and he killed them. And maybe Fish knows, but they're just not revealing it yet. I don't know. I feel like Falcone might have been the one to kill Bruce's parents. I just feel like he might be. So Fish says Maroni is number 2 for a reason. Then he says Oswald told him she was making a move to take him out, and Fish tells him she loves and respects him, and she says he's like a father to her, and he says he's happy to hear it and toasts her, and says they can forget about it as the babbling of a condemned man. She says she's doing well when he asks which of the men is her lover. She says her heart has been broken, but admits she keeps one boy around for exercise. Lazio comes over at Falcone's gesture. He tells him to take care of her because if he breaks her heart, he breaks his heart. Lazio is dragged away. Falcone asks for her hand. She can hear that Lazio is being beaten. Falcone kisses her hand, walks out. She screams to all the patrons to scramble to get away before her rage erupts, and that was really intense. Fish is forced to be reckoned with, definitely. So then Montoya and Alan go see Oswald's mom because they want to, know what his mom is like. And she says he's been gone too long. And basically they want to give her the news that he's dead. And she says she doesn't know who would want to do her son harm. She tells him that some slut must have her son in her clutches. She says her son is handsome and naive, which is true. He's very naive. And she asks who they are, and they show the badges and tell her they're good cops. And they think he's been knocked off by Fish. And Butch tells Fish it was too soon to make a move on Falcone. And she agrees, but she says someday soon she'll kill him with her bare hands and teeth. She does want to kill Falcone. Everything she said to him was complete bullshit. She says she just wishes Oswald, or as she calls him, Penguin, was still alive because she didn't make him suffer enough. And the truck Oswald was in pulls up at a farm. He's driving now, and he asks about the for rent sign on the trailer. And the minute he said this, I'm like, okay, now he's going to have to do his best to cover up this death. So he did as best as he can, basically. And the guy wants $100 a week, and he hands it over. And the guy asks about the truck, but Oswald blocks his view and then drives off to the trailer. So he basically did a very good job covering up this death, because the guy literally says, what's in the truck, and, he's blocking his view, and the guy's like, oh, what's in that back seat over there, but Oswald just tells him, oh, this is just a for sale trailer. So then we see those two teens that were earlier in the episode. If you remember, those two people, took those two teens. They were taken into a room full of other kids. The girl asks where they are, and another kid says he doesn't know. There's a hole in the floor and a clanking sound coming from its depths. And Jim and Harvey show up at Fish's place. She greets them, and Harvey asks if she's still mad. And she says she's fond of Harvey and intrigued by Jim. And she says she regrets giving the word to kill them. She didn't mean to kill them. And Jim asks about the teen abductions. And she applauds him for killing Oswald and says he surprised her. And, she also thinks that Oswald's dead at this point. Everyone thinks Oswald's dead, as I said. So she says he's a sinner like the rest of them, and Jim describes the kidnappers, and Harvey tells her about the poison pen they're using, and Fish says there is a new overseas buyer that will take anyone as long as they're young and healthy, but she doesn't know what they want them for, and she says she doesn't want to know. So that's basically she gave them some information, but not really a lot of information. So Barbra then brings Jim a drink, and he tells her about the kidnapping case. And again, Barbra, I'm very interested in her character, because here's the thing with Barbra. Again, she's kind of on to Jim at this point. Basically, he tells her no one seems to know why they want the kids, and he complains about the press blackout on the news. She tells him he seems very different and troubled lately, and he admits he's had trouble sleeping lately. She tells him newspapers always get anonymous tips, and he says he can't do it. And she calls the newspaper and tells him that someone is abducting homeless kids, and talks to Essen, who is, of course, his boss. She hangs up on the call, and Jim tells her that she can't do things like this if he tells her stuff, and he relents and says it was the right thing to do, but that she can't do it again. So the headline says, Child Snatchers. She's very livid and asks if he called it in. She says he's done it before, and he says he's never on his own case. So Jim says he didn't call it in. He swears, look, I swear I didn't call it in. He tells her they have a slim lead. There are only 3 companies that could have ordered the drug, and they plan to learn on all 3 and see who pops. So Harvey tells Jim he almost couldn't tell he was lying. Jim insists he wasn't and calls the judge for the warrants on the drug companies. And we see a guy ranting to the kidnappers about the newspaper headline. He's not happy about this newspaper headline. Because not only was he getting them the drugs, he was storing the kids for them. He demands another $5,000, and the woman says they don't have that kind of cash. And the woman says that the doll maker doesn't tolerate failure, and he says that's not his problem. So she stabs her drug pen into his henchman. The guy panics. He tells them it's just business. Then there's flashing blue lights, and they're annoyed that the cops aren't there. And Harvey asks if Barbra called in a tip. So yeah, that was a really intense scene, obviously. So Harvey then asks if Barbra called in a tip. And he says that she did. But he didn't want him to. And Harvey says he needs to keep Barbra in line and tells him he's a monkey riding a racehorse and that she's out of his league. I thought that was a fun scene to watch. I like the banter between Harvey and, sorry, I'm getting a Skype message. I like the banter between Harvey and Jim. I like that they're doing that. I think that's a cool thing to watch. I enjoy that overall. But yeah, I enjoyed that. And the kidnappers then get away in a delivery van. The manager tells the janitor to get rid of the kids and hose down the room. He leaves, and then Jim is there with a gun in the guy's face. The janitor goes downstairs, but before he can do anything to the kids, Jim shoots him. He falls into a hole in the floor, screaming, and it's really intense violence here. The effects in this scene were very well done. The effects definitely were improved in this episode. The effects in the first episode were good, but the effects in this episode I thought were a little bit better. I mean, it's a show that really the effects are getting better every single episode, and I can already tell that this is going to be one of those shows where it gets better every episode. And he basically says, then the mayor thanks Jim and Harvey for saving the kids and promises that the teens of the city will take care of them. And he says they can't let the other teens on the streets live alone and unprotected because they're not in good condition there. And then we see Cat again. And we see the cops trying out the kids, and he says he's getting the kids off the streets and into the loving arms of juvenile services. And Jim asks the mayor where the kids are being sent, and he says to foster homes, to an upstate juvenile correctional facility. And the mayor tells him half the petty crime in the city is due to homeless kids. That's why there's so much crime in the city, is because of these homeless kids. And Jim says the mayor is using this crime as a pretext to lock up these kids without any due process. But the mayor doesn't care. He takes the offered drink from Essen and toast. He doesn't care about this, pretty much. So then Alfred comes to see Jim, and I really like this scene. I thought this was well done, because again, this really showed me that the guy that plays Alfred's a really good actor. I thought he was a very good actor in this scene, just really, really good acting from him in this next scene. He tells Jim that Bruce respects him, and asks him to drop by at tea time, and Jim agrees, and Bruce sits at his desk drawing morbid pictures, listening to heavy metal punk on his headphones, and he tells him about what's going on and everything. So the kids are being loaded onto the buses, and Kat says there's a mistake, that she was supposed to talk to Jim Gordon, and the cop says she can have her phone call when she gets there, and they force her onto the bus anyway. And I love how spunky, Kat really is. She's such a force to be reckoned with. And she doesn't even tell them their name. They just list her as Jane Doe. And Kat then sits by a crying kid. She tells the kid that juvie isn't so bad. And she says not to make friends with anyone who acts too friendly. And in a fight to go with the eyes. I really like that scene. It worked perfectly with her character. And, I mean, one of the things that's so great about Kat is just the way that she is. Kat is just such a great character, in my opinion. She's definitely is one of the best characters on this show, and I love that they gave her more to do. Definitely, she's just such a great character. And then, of course, things end up going bad because the lady kidnapper comes on the bus, and she's one of the ones taking them away. So, obviously, this is not going to be good. So Kat panics, runs for the exit, and it was cool to see her scared. It was cool to see Kat scared because, if you've seen the Batman movies or the Gotham, anything related with Gotham, Kat is usually a very ruthless person, and it was cool to see her scared of something. It's making her a little bit more vulnerable, more of a likable character, and I understand that eventually all these criminals are going to end up being really bad, but they all have a reason for doing something. Again, none of these criminals are just being villains to be villains. They have missions, so it's really getting you to feel for all of them, and I like that the show's doing that. So the woman threatens them all, Kat gives up, goes back to her seat, and the mayor bursts in, ranting to Essen about a busload of the kids going missing. He asks if it was the Snatchers, and she says it definitely could be. She says they're working on it, and Harvey is beating the manager they arrested with a phone book. He tells him that there was a picture on the side of the truck, and Jim asks what it was. And he says it was a blue plate and a silver fork. And they ask if it was a catering company, and he swears he doesn't know what they do to the kids, and they tell him to draw the logo. So the kidnappers unload the kids into a faculty-type facility, and they realize they're one kid short. And the woman goes back on the bus to look, and we see Kat hiding behind a seat. Very intense scene here. She's ducking low. She evades the woman's gaze. The woman pulls a gun, creeps further back. Kat sneaks off the bus, rolls under it, but the woman can't find her. So they decide they must have recounted. Harvey and Jim are drawing a blank on the logo, and Essen says they have officers searching bridges and tunnels, and Jim then looks at the logo and says it's not a plate and fork, but it's actually a trident. And he's correct, because it says trident shipping. And they tell the kids to quiet down. A guard runs in with eyes bleeding, saying he was scratched. And we see his eyes were literally clawed out. That was a hard scene to watch. And the one says, "Oh, you'll be fine." She then puts a bullet in his head because she sees his eyes have been scratched completely out. So she goes looking for his attack in the warehouse. And Kat is hiding among some crates. And again, I love seeing scared Kat. I thought it was really well done. The woman is nearby and getting closer. She turns the corner with the gun, and then we see Kat's locket fall, and the woman realizes she's above her. She takes aim to shoot her, and Jim tackles her, and he asks Kat's name, and she says, and I love what Kat says. She just says, "Is that some of your business?" I love that she says that. Why is that some of your business? I thought that was really well done, and a really intense scene there. So, basically, he took down the woman, and that was the end of that. He took down the woman. So Alfred then tells Jim that Bruce hasn't been sleeping and he's been having nightmares, and this was really weird. He's been cutting himself, he's been burning himself, and Jim recommends a shrink, but Alfred says there are no shrinks because it's a rule that Bruce had that he will uphold. and he says he has to trust him to choose his own course, since the boy is away, and he asks what Alfred wants him to do. And Bruce is there and says he wants him to talk some sense into him. And Alfred chews him out for eavesdropping. Bruce says the butler's a worrywart, and Bruce admits he burned his hand, and Jim says talking to someone can be very helpful. And I like that we got this with Bruce right now. Bruce is going through a very hard time, definitely, very hard time. And Bruce asks if it will help him to talk about what he saw in the war, and Jim says a little. Bruce says he's not hurting himself, but he's testing himself. He's not actually killing himself. He's testing himself. This was really interesting. I thought this was interesting when we got here. He tells Jim he's been following his story in the paper, feels sorry for the kids. He says he wants to give some money to them, and Jim says they need someone to care for them, and money won't buy that. And Bruce offers clothes since they all look ragged, and the kids all come in looking in new clothes, and I thought that was just such a great scene. It really shows how giving of a person Bruce really is, and I thought that was very well done in my opinion. So, Cat's arguing with a cop that he needs to call her Cat, and he says she has to go upstate with the others, and she demands that he get her James Gordon. And if she doesn't, she's gonna say that he touched her. Like, she is definitely a force to be reckoned with here. And he's shocked, and she says she's going to scream in 3 seconds. He relents, because he's obviously terrified of her. So Oswald then lies on the trailer looking up at his revenge map, and he's drawn all of the goings on in Gotham. His phone rings, and he says he's looking at the sun right now, and it doesn't look good. He's got one of the kids with him. You know, there was that one kid that he didn't kill, and tells his mom that he will poke his eyeballs out. And that was very big there, because his mom says that he's been gone for so long, but his mom basically is in on it. She knows that he's not dead, so that was very interesting. And the woman doesn't seem to believe in me. Tells her the video he sent should be proof. He says if $10,000 is too much, they can talk, but she ends up hanging up. So the question is, what is he going to do with this kid? I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen there. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Oswald's going to do with this kid. So Oswald tells the young guy that he must be quite the scamp if his mom didn't believe him. And that was interesting. So Jim then shows up, and Cat says they need to talk. This was the last scene of the episode, and a very well done scene, in my opinion. He asks the other cop to leave, but takes her file. She tells him to call her Cat, and he tells her she's quite a survivor. She tells him she has something he really wants. She asks if he can get her out. And she says she knows he's a friend of Bruce Wayne, and not like the others. And he sits and asks if she means Bruce, and she tells him Mario was a pasty. And since she was, and this is true, she was hiding out, and she saw Bruce's parents get murdered, so she basically is going to help Jim find out who killed, Bruce's parents. And that was basically how the episode ended, and I gotta say, it was a very good episode. I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was fantastic. I was really into it, and there's a lot to talk about here, definitely. First of all, is Cat going to reveal to Jim who it was? I feel like it's a little too early for us to actually find out who it was. But if there is a part of me that feels that the person that killed, his parents and everything, I really feel that the person that killed his parents is Falcone, because it makes sense. If Falcone killed, his parents, it makes perfect sense, because he said he had a deal with the Waynes, but some things got out of balance. So, was there some sort of deal he made with them and they didn't keep their promise and then he killed them? It makes sense if you think about it. So, maybe it was, in fact, Falcone that did it. I don't know. But Fish, we know, is after Falcone. So, we'll have to see what's going to happen with Fish. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen there. Oswald, I don't know what Oswald is going to do with this kid. I honestly have no idea what he's going to do with him. I don't know. It's really intense there, and I like the way they're doing that. As far as Bruce goes, I like seeing Bruce being very giving to people, but I really hope that I really hope we see more of Bruce in the next episode. I like this episode focused more on Selina Kyle. I thought that was well done. And I like that basically they're calling her Cat, and I like that. And the references to other Gotham things, they didn't show them as much in this episode, which I liked. I liked that there weren't as many, they're going to become this, We had that one reference with the Penguin, but that's really it. There wasn't much else there. And I also like that we do have that tension between Barbra and Jim. It is true what Harvey is saying, that, Barbra is kind of out of his league, and the thing with Barbra is she is on to him. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with Barbra and Jim as well. But overall, I love this episode. I thought it was really good. I didn't have many problems with it at all. My only problem with the episode was that there were a couple scenes that dragged on a little bit, but that was really it. So, I really like this episode. Thought it was really well done. I'll see you guys in my next video. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. Again, my opinion, major improvement over the last episode. Really enjoyed it a lot more than I did the first episode. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for, I guess, tomorrow's episode of Sons of Anarchy. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.